Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, China's been stealing our intellectual property and using unfair trade practices for far too long. We all acknowledge that. And I'm glad the President is taking this problem seriously, unlike his predecessor. However, I'm increasingly concerned that the tariffs, both those in place and those that have been proposed, are going to hurt American consumers and our domestic businesses, especially in the agricultural sector, far more than they're going to persuade the Chinese to change their unfair trade practices. And with the President's announcement last night that he's prepared to impose as much as $400 billion more in tariffs if China does not make systemic changes, it appears that this situation is escalating rapidly. My question is, what is the administration's overall strategy to find an equitable solution in this case before the burden of these tariffs have a substantial impact on American consumers and businesses and drive down U.S. economic growth?
Well, the basic strategy is to try to bring enough pressure on parties who are not behaving appropriately so that they conclude that the alternative of continuing their present behavior is going to be more painful to them than acceding to the request we've made that they honor intellectual property. As to the importance of intellectual property, the President is extremely committed, and so am I. And in fact, yesterday we had an historic event. The President signed the 10 millionth patent issued by the United States. That's almost half all the patents that have ever been issued in the entire world. And more than half of the 10 million have been issued since 1985. So the pace of patents is growing very, very rapidly, and that's good. But it's only good if we can force other nations to honor them and not abuse them, not force technology transfers, not steal through cybersecurity, not do all of the horrible things that we're well aware are in fact being done. So the only method we could think of, we've tried negotiation. I myself have been 4 or 5 times in China negotiating over the last year or so, and the President has concluded that we need more than just negotiation. There have been years of talk with China about intellectual property. The President feels, and I agree, that now is the time for action, and unless we make it more painful for them to continue those practices than to do otherwise, unless we put that kind of pressure on, it's unlikely we will succeed.
And we appreciate your focus on that. I mean, I think we all agree that they've been abusive, they cheated, and again, I like the focus. But this thing seems to be escalating out of control fairly quickly. And I want to come back to one other issue while I'm running out of time here. But the White House's decision to impose tariffs under the Section 301 investigation is also very concerning. And this decision walks back an earlier announcement that the United States and China had reached a tentative deal that would increase agricultural exports in China and put the implementation of tariffs on hold. What's more, the President's proposal to move forward with hundreds of billions of dollars in additional tariffs threatens to severely damage the ag industry at a time when producers are already experiencing low prices in a down farm economy. In fact, one commodities analyst this week described the current commodity markets as wildly dangerous, largely due to trade uncertainties. A recent $1 drop in soybean prices will potentially cost soybean producers in just my state of South Dakota alone $225 million. Corn, wheat, beef, and pork are all suffering market price declines as well due to current trade policies. And I'd like to drive home that point, the point that with every passing day, the United States loses market share to other countries competing with our ag product markets, some of it unlikely to be recaptured. So I have 2 questions. First, with low and recently dropping crop and livestock prices and slim profit margins, producers are looking to the administration to create more opportunities for trade, not less. What is the administration doing to increase ag exports and promote jobs in rural communities? And how long will farmers, ranchers, and the rest of rural America have to hold their breath until U.S. trade with multiple global partners stabilizes? Question number 1. Second, what new trade agreements is the administration working on to counterbalance what we may lose if we don't reach an agreement on NAFTA, to offset what we gave up by pulling out of TPP, and to anticipate the result of imposing crippling tariffs on our top trading partner, which is China.
Well, I met last Friday with a delegation of farmers from North Dakota, and they voiced similar concerns, but they amplified it in another direction as well. They felt that the market price, at least of soybeans, which was the main product they discussed with me, that the market price decline has been exaggerated by speculative activity. Their belief is that the price will level out at a better level than it is now. They also believe, and our own research tends to confirm, it will be relatively difficult for China to fully implement their threat on soybeans. Fact is that Brazil now ships to China around 55% of the soybean imports it needs. We ship around 33% from America. For Brazil to replace us, and they're the only one which has remotely enough capacity to do it, they would have to increase their exports of soybeans to China by 60%. Well, if they could do that, they'd be doing it already if they could do it at a competitive price. There's no evidence that Brazil has been holding back just because we didn't put tariffs on China. So I think you're going to find that as this thing settles down, while there probably will be some problems, two things will happen. One, to the degree that China is able to pay a premium to Brazil to divert shipments from their other existing customers, that will open up for American farmers the markets that were vacated by that product. Whether that will be a full offset, I don't know, but I think that the current speculative activity in the ag futures market is due to anxiety, fear of the unknown, fear what might come next. And I sympathize very much with that, but I heard from big farmers directly, they do think it's a little exaggerated. I don't know whether your constituents in South Dakota feel the same or not, but the problem we have is if we're not going to fix the big problem, which is the unfair trade practices, the abuse of intellectual property now, when are we ever going to fix it? It's very, very difficult to do. It would have been a lot easier had prior administrations dealt with it before things got as far out of hand. But the president feels very committed that we've got to put maximum pressure on to have any hope of fixing the problem.
Well, and there, just so you know, there's a lot of consternation in farm country
Well,
about
I know that,
this.
sir.
And I hope that you're right. I hope that things settle and stabilize. But in the long run, there is serious concerns about restricting access to markets rather than expanding. And obviously, in farm country, we've got to do everything we can to grow our markets. And it doesn't seem, at least right now, we don't see a lot of evidence that there's any negotiation going on with respect to some of these countries that we missed out on with TPP. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just add one thing. You mentioned about the proposal the Chinese had come up with about the 70 billion, including a lot of ag. I was the one who negotiated that. So that does show you that the administration is trying. It's just we were not able to accomplish enough to justify, in the president's mind, not going ahead with the tariffs. So I think there already are some signs that we may get some ultimate resolution. I don't think the Chinese want a trade war any more than we do. And as you know, President's general view is that the trade war was lost years ago. This is an effort to fix the outcomes that were unsatisfactory from it.
Senator Case.